What you are about to hear was not supposed to reach you, not because it was hidden behind a paywall, not because it was buried in an archive, but because most people, the vast majority of the human population alive on this planet right now, are moving through 2026 completely unconscious of what is already in motion. They are scrolling, they are consuming, they are sleepwalking through the most seismically charged year in 5 centuries. In imagination that by the time they feel the ground shift beneath them, it will be too late to choose how they respond. But you are here, right now, in this exact moment. And that is not an accident. 500 years ago, a man sat alone in a candlelit chamber in Provence, France, long after the rest of the world had surrendered to sleep. He gazed into a brass bowl of still water. He breathed slowly. And then the visions came, not as dreams, not as hallucinations, but as transmissions. As precise and surgical as dispatches from a future that had already decided what it was going to do to the present. His name was Michel de Nostradamus. The world knows him as Nostradamus. And what he saw in that brass bowl, what he encoded into 942 quatrains in a language deliberately fractured between French, Latin, Greek, and cryptographic symbol, what he saw was this year, this era, this exact sequence of events. He did not publish those visions to frighten humanity. He published them as a map for the ones who would still be awake when the terrain changed. You are holding that map right now. Before we go deeper, and we are going very deep today, if this transmission is landing in your body the way it is landing in mine right now, leave a comment below with the words 7 seals. That phrase is not arbitrary. We will return to it. But for now, understand that the people who choose to leave that comment are marking themselves as part of something. A network of awareness that Nostradamus himself encoded into Prophecy 7. Hold that thought. Now, let us begin the briefing. The first of the 7 dark visions for 2026 centers on a celestial event that Nostradamus described with chilling precision, a solar eclipse occurring in the 8th month, the sun draped in black, the stars made visible in the middle of the day. This is not poetic language. This is a literal description of the total solar eclipse of August 2026, which tracks across Greenland, Spain, and North Africa, a path that ancient cartographers and medieval astrologers alike recognized as a corridor of karmic reckoning for the Western world. But here is what the standard astronomy reports will not tell you. That eclipse does not arrive alone. At the moment of totality, in the precise window when the moon occults the solar disk and the corona blazes into visibility, Mars, Saturn, and Pluto are locked in a triangulated formation not observed in this exact configuration for 800 years. The last time these 3 bodies occupied this simultaneous geometric tension, the Black Death was sweeping across Eurasia and the feudal order of medieval Europe was beginning its terminal collapse. You do not need to believe in astrology to understand the implication. What you need to understand is that planetary cycles are not folklore, they are timing mechanisms. And the timing mechanism activating in August 2026 is signaling the forced emergence of everything humanity has refused to look at. Nostradamus called it the hour when the sun hides and the shadow speaks. The shadow is not evil. Let that be absolutely clear. The shadow is the repository of everything that has been denied, the fears that have been medicated, the truths that have been suppressed, the systems that have been allowed to operate in darkness because the light was too bright to sustain. The August eclipse is the moment that darkness becomes visible. Climate infrastructure failure, information ecosystems built entirely on fabrication, supply chains that have been one pressure point away from collapse for 15 years. The eclipse does not cause these things, it reveals them. And revelation, as any initiate of any genuine mystery tradition will tell you, is not the same as destruction. Revelation is the precondition for rebuilding. The 18-month window that opens in August 2026 and extends into late 2027 is, according to the quatrain pattern analysis, the most concentrated period of collective pressure since the Second World War. What happens inside that window shapes the next 500 years. That is not hyperbole. That is the mathematics of historical cycles meeting the mathematics of celestial mechanics at a single convergence point. The question is not whether the eclipse happens. It will. The question is what you are carrying when it does. The second prophecy is the one that makes modern interpreters the most uncomfortable, because it speaks directly to the world we are already living in. Nostradamus described it as the age of machines that speak but do not know, and men who listen but do not think. Academically, this passage was long interpreted as a metaphor for propaganda or printing press corruption. But in 2026, the interpretation requires no metaphor at all. We are now in the most disorienting information environment in human history. Artificial intelligence generates text, images, video, voice, and emotional affect at a scale and quality that makes epistemological verification nearly impossible for the average person. Deepfakes of world leaders announcing wars that did not happen. Scientific studies generated in minutes with no underlying research. Financial forecasts, medical diagnoses, romantic relationships, all increasingly mediated by systems whose fundamental architecture is the production of plausible output, not true output. Nostradamus saw the consequence of this with terrifying clarity. He wrote that when the voice of the machine replaces the voice of the heart, the people will wander in a desert of their own making, unable to drink because they cannot trust the water. That desert is here. 2026 is the year its full extent becomes undeniable. The spiritual instruction embedded in this prophecy is precise. The only counterfrequency to technological dissociation is direct, unmediated inner knowing. Meditation is not a lifestyle accessory. In the context of this prophecy, it is a survival protocol. The capacity to drop below the noise of external information and contact the coherent signal of your own awareness, that capacity becomes, in the 2026 window, the single most strategically important faculty a human being can develop. Not because everything else fails, but because everything else becomes unreliable. And unreliable is the new dangerous. The third vision opens with water. Nostradamus wrote of brothers who once drank from the same river turning against each other when the river runs dry. He described fields that once fed nations becoming dust fields where armies march, not for ideology, but for bread. This was considered among his most symbolically abstract prophecies for centuries. It is no longer abstract. It is the agricultural and hydrological report for 2025 and 2026. The Colorado River is legally over-allocated. The Tigris and Euphrates are at historically low flows amid accelerating geopolitical friction between Turkey, Syria, and Iraq. The Mekong Basin has become a theater of upstream dam control and downstream resource starvation. The aquifers beneath the breadbaskets of India and the American Midwest are being drawn down at rates that have no sustainable trajectory. And the climate models, the serious ones, not the politically processed public versions, show 2026 as a year when multiple of these pressure systems reach simultaneous threshold. What Nostradamus identified in this prophecy was not simply ecological catastrophe. They identified the karmic feedback loop. Humanity has treated water, soil, and atmosphere as external resources to be extracted, rather than as living systems of which humanity is an internal component. The resource wars of 2026 are not punishments. They are mirrors. They are the external world reflecting back the internal spiritual condition of a species that forgot it was embedded in a web of reciprocal life. The Hermetic principle is exact here, as within, so without. The drought in the outer world is the materialization of a drought in the inner world. And the healing of one requires the healing of the other. Now stop. Because what I am about to tell you about the fourth prophecy is the reason that planetary researchers, esotericists, and a very specific category of astronomers have been communicating in coded language through private channels since early 2025. In March of 2026, a planetary alignment occurs that last materialized over 1,000 years ago. 7 of the planets visible to the naked eye, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune, converge into a configuration that the ancient Babylonian astronomical records called the opening of the gate. Medieval European astrologers who had access to translated Arabic versions of those records called it the moment of permeable boundary. Nostradamus, who had studied both traditions through his physician's access to pre-Inquisition manuscript collections, encoded it as the hour when the 7 torches burn together and the dreaming world bleeds into the waking world. What this means practically is the following. Planetary bodies are not merely gravitational objects. They are archetypal broadcasting stations. Each one carries a specific frequency, a specific quality of cosmic information that interacts with the electromagnetic field of the human nervous system in ways that conventional neuroscience is only now beginning to instrument. When 7 of these broadcasting stations align in a unified transmission, the effect on human perception, intuition, and reality processing is not incremental, it is categorical. The veil, the psychic membrane that maintains the ordinary boundary between conscious and unconscious, between seen and unseen, between this dimension and the adjacent ones, that membrane becomes porous. For the unprepared, this produces terror, psychosis, and paranoia. History records these windows as periods of mass hysteria, strange visions, and civic instability. For the prepared, for the ones who have done the inner work, this same porosity produces something extraordinary, an acceleration of synchronicity, an opening of perception, a direct encounter with levels of reality that ordinary waking consciousness cannot access. This is why daily practice matters now, not in 3 months, now. The alignment in March 2026 does not wait for you to be ready. It arrives on the schedule of the cosmos. And whether it finds you open or whether it finds you closed is entirely a function of what you choose to do between now and then. The 5th prophecy is perhaps the most politically charged, and I will deliver it without flinching. Nostradamus wrote of a figure who rises from the eastern lands carrying the language of peace, but the architecture of division. A face already known to the world, a voice that promises restoration but delivers control. A leader who appears in the window of maximum fear, when eclipses have already shaken perception, when technology has already fractured reality, when resources are already contested, and who offers himself as the answer to all of it. The spiritual tradition across every genuine lineage, from Vedic to Kabbalistic to Gnostic to indigenous, has a single consistent warning about this figure. It is not that such figures should be fought, though sometimes they must be. It is that such figures can only rise when a population has outsourced its internal compass, when enough people have stopped trusting their own perception, their own discernment, their own access to truth. A vacuum is created, and something always fills a vacuum. The diagnostic is simple. Genuine leaders, in any tradition, do one thing consistently. They return power to the individual. They teach, they model, they facilitate, but their core impulse is to make themselves unnecessary. False leaders, regardless of their rhetoric, do the opposite. They create dependency. They position themselves as the indispensable interpreter between the individual and reality. They reward surrender and punish questioning. Measure every voice of authority in your life against that diagnostic. Without exception, the 6th vision shakes the ground, literally. Nostradamus described massive tremors in the new lands of the West, walls falling into the sea, fire rising from the earth, the coast consumed. Geological modeling of the Cascadia subduction zone, the San Andreas fault system, and the offshore fault complexes running beneath the Pacific coast of the Americas places 2025 through 2027 in a historically elevated stress window. These are not fringe calculations. These are the published assessments of USGS seismological modeling, cross-referenced with the 300 to 500-year recurrence intervals of megathrust events in the Pacific Northwest. But here again, Nostradamus was not simply a geological forecaster. He was a consciousness cartographer. What he embedded in the earthquake prophecy was a specific teaching about what catastrophe does to the human soul when the soul is prepared to receive its instruction. Earthquakes destroy infrastructure. They do not destroy essence. They strip away every artificial layer of identity, the titles, the possessions, the illusions of permanence, and they leave what is actually real: community, vulnerability, shared humanity. The earthquake prophecy is, at its deepest level, a prophecy about what survives when everything that is not real is removed. And the answer, in every tradition that has ever mapped this territory, is always the same. What survives is connection. What survives is love in its unsentimental, structural, foundational form. The question the earthquake asks, not metaphorically, but existentially, is this: if everything you use to define yourself were removed tonight, what would remain? And is that remainder enough to build from? The seventh and final prophecy is the one Nostradamus placed last in the sequence, and the reason for its placement is deliberate. It is the one that does not end in darkness. He wrote of circles forming in the night, gatherings of those who had chosen to remain awake while the world slept. People coming together not around a doctrine or a flag or a charismatic singular authority, but around the shared recognition of truth. He called them the chosen, but not in the hierarchical theological sense. Chosen in the sense of having made a choice, the choice to awaken, the choice to refuse the comfortable amnesia that the systems of distraction and fabrication were offering on every frequency. These circles, he wrote, will become the repositories of what survives, not gold, not weapons, not supply chains. Awareness, direct, unmediated, embodied awareness of what is true. And from these circles, he wrote, will come the revelations. The hidden things will be spoken aloud. The suppressed systems will be brought into light. The manufactured divisions will be seen through, and what was fractured will find, if not immediate healing, at least the clear recognition of its fracture and a coherent path toward repair. The circles are forming right now. This moment, in the comment sections of channels like this one, in private networks of people who share your recognition that something fundamental is shifting, in the small gatherings in living rooms and on mountain trails and in meditation spaces where people are speaking to each other with a level of honesty that the official public discourse cannot yet accommodate. You are already inside one of these circles. You have been, possibly without fully realizing it, for some time. Here is what I need you to do, not metaphorically, practically. There is a sequence of preparation that corresponds to each of the 7 prophecies, and it is not complicated. For the eclipse, begin confronting the shadows you have been postponing, the conversation you have not had, the pattern you have not examined. The August window will surface it regardless. Better to meet it consciously. For the AI fragmentation, institute a daily practice of unmediated awareness. 15 minutes minimum. No phone, no input, no content, just the direct signal of your own consciousness. For the resource prophecies, move into relationship with water, food, and soil with reverence rather than utility. Not as emergency prepping, but as reciprocal living. For the March alignment, begin deepening your energetic practice now, whatever form that takes for you. Meditation, movement, sound, time in nature. The alignment will amplify whatever frequency you are holding when it arrives. For the false leader prophecy, audit your information diet ruthlessly. Who are you allowing to interpret reality for you? On what authority? For the earthquake, locate your community. Know who is in your circle. Know what you are building together. And for the 7th seal, keep your awareness awake and your testimony honest. Share what you are actually seeing. In the age of fabricated signal, genuine witness is a radical act. Leave a comment below with the words 7 seals if you are committing to this sequence, not as a gesture, as a declaration, as the marking of a moment when you chose, with full awareness, to remain awake during the 1 year in 5 centuries that required you to be. The prophecies of Nostradamus have been decoded, disputed, debated, and dismissed for 500 years. And through all of it, one thing has remained constant. The ones who read them as warnings designed to frighten them remained frightened, and the ones who read them as maps designed to orient them found, in the chaos of the years they described, a strange and unshakable sense of direction. Between 1957 and 1977, you've felt it your entire life, haven't you? The eclipse is on the calendar. The alignment is already in motion. The ground is already under stress. The information environment is already fractured. The false voices are already speaking. And somewhere in a city, in a town, in a place you have never been and may never visit, someone who watched this same video is sitting with the same recognition you are sitting with right now. That something is happening, that it is larger than the news cycle, that the framework they were given for understanding the world no longer contains what the world is actually doing, that the moment requires something different from them than they have previously been asked to give, that someone is part of your circle you may never meet. You may never exchange a single word, but in the most precise and structural sense of what connection actually means, you are already in contact, already coordinated by the same awareness, the same refusal to look away, the same choice to remain present in the most disorienting year in living memory. Nostradamus ended his most urgent sequence of prophecies with a phrase that scholars have argued over for centuries. Translated as literally as the composite language allows, it reads something like this: "The ones who hold the light while the night is longest will not need to announce the dawn. The dawn will announce them." That is the promise buried inside every one of these 7 dark visions. Not that darkness is avoidable, not that the eclipse does not come, or the ground does not shake, or the false voices do not speak. They come, they shake, they speak. But there is a quality of human consciousness that none of those forces can extinguish. That in fact, all of those forces serve to intensify, the way pressure serves to intensify a diamond. You are that quality of consciousness. That is not inspiration. That is the precise conclusion of a 500-year-old cosmic map drawn by a man who sat alone in the dark with a brass bowl of water and saw, across the full expanse of centuries, the face of whoever was awake enough to receive it. He saw you, and he left you a map. Subscribe if you are using it.